Have you ever felt that look when you say you don't drink alcohol? That tiny pause, that 1 second of silence, like you just broke a rule nobody ever admitted existed. And then comes the question, wait, why not? Sometimes it comes with curiosity, sometimes with surprise, and sometimes with something that feels almost like discomfort. Because even though almost nobody says it out loud, there is a quiet expectation that drinking is normal, that joining in is normal, that saying no needs an explanation. And the strange thing is, if you don't drink, you've probably heard the same theories for years. That you're boring, that you're too serious, that you must have had a bad experience, that you simply don't know how to have fun. But psychology suggests something very different. Because often, it's not really about alcohol. It's about the relationship you have with yourself. And that's where everything starts to get interesting. Because most of us do things without asking too much about why. We follow customs. We follow habits. We follow what the group is doing. And usually, there's nothing wrong with that. It's human. We all want to belong. We all want to feel like we're part of something. But some people seem to have a different inner filter, a filter that turns on before certain decisions and asks one very simple question. Do I really want this? Or, maybe even more importantly, would I still do this if nobody else was doing it? It might seem like a small difference, but it completely changes the experience. Because while some people get carried along by the moment, you might stop for a second. You think, you observe, you listen to what you feel, and then you decide. Not because you're trying to be different, not because you want to stand out, you just find it hard to ignore that inner voice. And the more you listen to it, the harder it becomes to do something that doesn't fit with it. But there is something even more curious. Many people who don't drink describe a similar feeling, almost like they never fully understood what everyone else found so appealing. Maybe this has happened to you. Everyone seems to be enjoying something. Everyone seems excited. Everyone seems to be looking forward to a moment, and you just don't feel it the same way. Not because it's wrong, not because you're broken, but because inside you, the same thing simply doesn't happen. And when we talk about alcohol, this happens more often than it seems, because many people don't experience losing control as something pleasant. They don't feel it as freedom. They feel it as the exact opposite. Uncomfortable, strange, hard to explain. Maybe you never liked noticing how your mind changes. Maybe you never liked feeling your thoughts become slower. Or your emotions become more intense. Or your body stop feeling exactly like it always does. While some people find relaxation in that, others feel discomfort. Not because they're afraid, but because they deeply value feeling like themselves. Because for some people, mental clarity is one of the most important things they have. And losing even a small part of that clarity doesn't feel like a gain. It feels like a loss. In fact, this is where a very interesting psychological difference appears. Many people use alcohol to reduce something: anxiety, shame, tension, self-consciousness. In other words, they are trying to temporarily move away from an uncomfortable feeling. But other people don't feel that need with the same intensity. They don't need to become a different version of themselves to enjoy themselves. They don't need to talk more, or think less, or feel more daring. Not because they're perfect, not because they have extraordinary self-esteem, but simply because they are already relatively comfortable being who they are. And that changes many things. Because when you don't feel the need to escape yourself, the idea of altering your mental state loses much of its appeal. And here is something people rarely mention. Most people think about what alcohol can add, but people who don't drink often think about something different. what it could take away. Energy, concentration, sleep, time, clarity, presence. And when they make that quiet calculation in their mind, the answer is usually simple. It's not worth it. Because while others feel like they're gaining something, you may feel like you're giving up something valuable. And that difference changes the whole experience. But there is another factor that goes even deeper. It has to do with the way some people find satisfaction. Because not every brain is looking for the same rewards. Some people need constant intensity, novelty, stimulation, movement. Others don't. Some people find satisfaction in much quieter things. A conversation that lasts for hours. A slow walk. A book that makes them think. Learning something new. Creating something. Feeling completely present. And when someone gets enough well-being from those experiences, alcohol stops occupying an important place. Not because it is forbidden, not because it is bad, but simply because it doesn't add anything they truly need. But maybe the most powerful reason of all is something else. Observation. Because many people who don't drink learn something by watching others, not necessarily something traumatic. It doesn't have to be. They simply observed. They saw people say things they later regretted. They saw pointless arguments, forgotten promises, impulsive decisions, hangovers, regret. And little by little, they started to notice a pattern. A sequence that repeated again and again. Fun, loss of control, consequences, regret, and then starting over. And for some people, that was enough. Because the human brain doesn't only learn from what it lives through, it also learns from what it observes. You can watch a story repeat itself in front of you and draw your own conclusions. And often, that is exactly what happens. You don't reject alcohol because you're afraid. You reject it because you feel like you already understand the price. And you simply aren't interested in paying it. What's curious is that society often interprets all of this in a very strange way, as if people who don't drink are missing something, as if they need to loosen up more, live more, think less. But maybe the reality is the opposite. Maybe many of these people simply discovered something earlier, that feeling free doesn't always mean losing control. That feeling alive doesn't always mean altering your mind. And that enjoying a night doesn't require becoming someone different. Because in the end, the real question was never why some people don't drink alcohol. The real question is, why do so many people feel like they need to? And the answer is probably different for everyone. But for those who choose not to drink, there is often a quiet reason that repeats itself again and again. They don't feel like they're missing anything. They don't feel like they're losing out. They don't feel like they need another version of themselves to enjoy life. And maybe that is the most important difference of all. Because some people use alcohol to feel more free, but others discovered something different, that the freedom they were looking for was already there from the beginning.